My name is Ntsikelelo Mzibomvu. I'm an author, a speaker, an entrepreneur, a host, and this is my entrepreneurship journey. Today I'm going to share with you my entrepreneurship journey. It's a bit weird to actually recollect and talk about it because we as entrepreneurs, we're always kind of focusing in the moment, and also in the future. So going back is something that I hardly ever do. So it's actually fun for me to share my journey. And I'm going to start with the fact that for me to get here, it started from a very big failure. I got to a point in my life at varsity where I was literally forced to drop out on my last year. Yeah, so that's how the story starts, as a dropout, and so I went around looking for a job, of course, and I discovered that I was not cut out for the employment world very quickly. I think the longest job I've ever held, in fact, I think it was my third job. So the first one I quit after 3 months, and the second one really was terrible. The last one was the longest. I think it was about 6 months, and I literally walked out because I knew that this was not for me. I cannot be stuck, in the center of these four walls in a cubicle. I just knew that, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just walked out. And when I got out, I went back home, you drop out, you're at home, trying to figure life out again. And I started, looking at problems around me that needed solutions, because fortunately, even though I didn't get my degree, I got the education, so I was able to then apply that to my immediate problems. And, one of the challenges, because I'm from Themba, which is a township in the East Rand, I got to see how other kids were not as fortunate as I was to even, pass school with good marks or get to varsity and be exposed to the things that I was exposed to, and also the high levels of unemployment. I mean, for me, not being employed was a choice. For them, not being employed was, like a reality, And so I started looking at problems, and that's how I got into social entrepreneurship. So my form of entrepreneurship is primarily social entrepreneurship. I create solutions to social problems and situations. And so I started giving talks at schools, because I wanted to motivate kids to start thinking differently, to start working on their belief systems. And because I having dropped out of school, I actually had a lot of time to read and study. And one of the things that I have to mention is dropping out led me to a depression. In fact, the last year and a half of varsity, I fell into a deep depression, and nothing could help me. No church, nobody could help me. I was just depressed. I didn't even want to watch TV. I didn't want to listen to radio. I mean, just listening to people happy on the radio used to piss me off. So I literally shut, myself out of the world. And but I needed help. And I kept looking. So that's how I got into the space of personal development. I started reading on alternative thinking. I started reading on a lot of books about, the mind and reconditioning the mind, and also creating wealth consciousness, because I've been coming from a township. I was surrounded by obviously poverty, like every other, kid that's from the township would tell you. So you find yourself unconsciously developing a sort of a scarcity consciousness, which then eventually affects everything that you do, even the relationships that you have with other people. So that was a big problem, because I could see that I was sabotaging myself on, in some cases, in some instances where I could have actually done better. So literally, I think the last year of my varsity, I was spending more time researching that material than I was, actually going to class. But that's not why I dropped out. It's a completely different reason. And so when I got back home, I had all this material, because I downloaded a whole lot of books, and literally like a whole lot of books. And I was studying, and I was learning how to visualize. I was learning how to meditate. I was learning how to recondition my mind. And for me, it was a big puzzle. Why isn't this being taught to kids in the township? Because coming from an apartheid system, this is exactly what we need. We need to recondition our minds and the kids so that we could think different and open ourselves up to the opportunities that come with the new democracy. So with that, I started doing talks at schools, talking to matriculants, and getting them to see themselves differently and think bigger, and I really fell in love with the space. And the deeper I got, the more I knew, the more I wanted to share. Eventually, in 2010, I published a book. It was called Beyond Democracy. And so that's where also the entrepreneurship part comes in, because I own all my publishing. I'm an independent author, and independent publisher as well. And the reason is I do not like asking for permission. When you have a manuscript that you want the world to read, chances are you might have to go to a publisher, and they will either turn you down or tell you that this needs to be fixed. And I wanted my truth to be unfiltered. I wanted it raw out there. So while I was helping my uncle publish his book, I got to experience the process, and I also wrote my first book, Beyond Democracy, which pretty much speaks to yes, we're from apartheid, we've achieved democracy, but now what? The book looked at how do we transition now from, or how do we fix the residual effects of apartheid? But that was a very broad subject, and I think people were not ready for it at the time, and it didn't do well. And also that's when I actually experienced my first disaster as a publisher, because I didn't have the right editor, I didn't have the right proofreader, so there was a lot of editing mistakes. And I tried to fix the book and republish it again, and it still had mistakes. So the next year, which was 2011, I decided to can that project completely and write a new book, which was Thinking Ghetto Genius. And so Thinking Ghetto Genius was a similar book to Beyond Democracy, but now I was targeting the township. So it had a target market. It was township youth, and it was for township development. And that book was better because now I had already had 2 tries and 2 failures, and now I'm a better writer, so it's a better book by far, And in fact, I like it. I think it's a classic, if I may say so myself. And yeah, so I pushed that, and I started the Ghetto Geniuses project. So that was in 2011. So Ghetto Geniuses project. In fact, Ghetto Geniuses project started in 2020 with the book Beyond Democracy. It's just that Thinking Ghetto Genius was the book now that was to run with the Ghetto Geniuses project. So I ran that, going to schools and doing talks and trying to do workshops and seminars, and yeah, and it was a very difficult time for me because the reception wasn't as positive, as I thought it would be. And also, if you try to talk to corporates and you've got a brand in South Africa in early, called Thinking Ghetto Genius, they become weary of you, because, in as much as South Africa benefits a lot from the township economy, corporate South Africa has been very shy to engage with the township. I don't know, maybe out of guilt, or maybe, they don't see it as something worthy of anything, or because of apartheid, it's the equivalent of the slums, so maybe they don't want to associate with that. But anyway, it didn't work well for me, but it was okay in the township because it kind of gave the people, the kids there, an identity. Okay, so this thing called a ghetto genius, so you can be a genius from the ghetto, cool, so I ran with it. A few years later, I think around 2015, I then published my 3rd book, and and throughout this time, this is just persistence. I'm trying different things. At some point I enrolled at the Branson Center of Entrepreneurship to try and refine some of my business skills, and so I'd pick something from here, I'd fail there, so, and that's another thing. There wasn't a formula. The only formula is persistence and effort, and that's what I was doing. I was just being persistent, and I was putting in effort. So 2015, I decided to write a book on entrepreneurial thinking, because then, now that the logic was, now that you've got a book on personal development for the township child still has to eat. They still have to, make a living. And how best to do that in a country, with high unemployment? Learn how to think entrepreneurially. I do not think you can teach anybody how to be an entrepreneur, but you can teach somebody the fundamentals of how to think like an entrepreneur, how to create solutions around problems that can then benefit you. And my model was an example of that, because here I was writing books to solve social problems, but also to solve my financial problems as well, and doing these talks and seminars. So from time to time I'd get a gig, and some other times it'd just be quiet. In fact, I think for the most part it was more quiet than gigs, because like I said, people did not want to really associate themselves with the ghetto. So anyway, I was happy. I found something to be proud of, something I could identify with. Thinking Ghetto Entrepreneur, now it was a package. You've got Thinking Ghetto Genius, Thinking Ghetto Entrepreneur, the Ghetto Geniuses project. But still, it's not working out. Then I started focusing on creating programs for corporates, because I realized that the very same problems that kids have, kids from the township have, are the same problems that you're going to find in corporate, because they're the same people, just older, and also the very same problems that black people have, on the reversal, are the same problems that white people have, which is old thinking, old ways of, old conditioning. And it could cause conflicts in the workplace, so I wanted to create, programs that, would heal that. And so I did, at that point, I think I was based in Fourways, and I did some workshops. I was with the Fourways Chamber of Commerce, so I'd do free workshops. And that's another thing. I've done a lot of free work in my entrepreneurship journey, simply because, when you dealing with a project a product like mine, people have to experience it for them to know how powerful it is. Otherwise, you just sound like you're selling something, and that doesn't exist, So I would do a lot of these free workshops, and in that there was a lady from MultiChoice who was head of HR, I think, and she was like, "Listen, we need to bring this to MultiChoice," and that was my first corporate gig, real corporate gig, and I had done smaller gigs, but I think that was, for a multinational, for me, that was, and it was, the results were splendid, I just kept hearing good things left, right, and center, Unfortunately, it didn't last. I'm not gonna get into the politics of why, but yeah, I had to move on. And also, the other thing is my product offering in the back end was still Ghetto Geniuses, so I couldn't actually sell the corporates my books, because it's like, whoa, dude, whoa, this is corporate, this is, so eventually I met up, so I had a friend of mine that we would work together on different projects. Like we had a dialogue platform called Ubuntu Sessions, which was really cool. For it lasted about a year, 2 years. It was in partnership with the Nelson Mandela Foundation, KFM, and Brand South Africa. So we had something there, I think, but I don't know, that's the thing about entrepreneurship. You could have like this great start to a project, and if there's no flow, if there's no especially if you have business partners, if you guys don't see things the same and the vision is not the same, no matter how beautiful it is from the outside, it's going to fall apart, and all that potential is going to fall with it. But but one of my partners then, Luvuyo Matasa, and he kept suggesting, because he read all 3 books, you know, while we were doing, you know, because he was there while I was doing some of the workshops. I mean, I met him while I was doing a workshop, and he was like, yo man, let's partner up. I'm in the development space, so I think we can work together and let's see how we can help each other. And so he had read all 3 books, and he kept saying, yo, listen, let's why don't you just put these books together, you know, make like, because these are like steps, you know, it makes sense for you to, you know, just have one book. And you know, so I heard him, and it was an idea that would come from time to time, but I'd always be like, you know what, I'm not ready to rewrite, because that's what it would mean. It would literally mean rewriting all 3 books into one. So in 2016, I was introduced to the art space, and at August House, or downtown Johannesburg, in Doornfontein, very close to Maboneng. So it's a building that houses really great artists, you know. And a friend of mine, Gamu, who's an artist, you know, invited me over, and I discovered a whole new world basically in the art space. And a year later, I think, or 2 years later, I have a book that I've been writing. So I spent time there. Let me just start there. I spent 3 months living in the studios with artists, and I had this book. I still have it. It's called 90 Days of August, and yeah. So you know, speaking to the 3 months that I was at August House. So it's unfinished, but 2 years later, I did a collaboration with one of the artists there, Great Joy in Love. And the book was titled The Path to Great Joy. It's an art book. And it did very well. It did very well in the art space. We launched it, I mean, within no time we sold out. And yeah, and it cemented my space in the art, you know, it cemented my position in the art space, as, you know, as a new entry, you know. And as an author in the art space, you know. So in that year, after, you know, releasing that book, and while we were still working on a couple of projects, I then connected again with my friend Luvuyo, and he was now with Reimagine South Africa, and he was telling me how, you know, the pillars of Reimagine South Africa, which speaks to political settlement, talking about the transition from apartheid to democracy. The other one, emotional settlement, which speaks to things like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where people are trying to heal, and also the last one being economic settlement, which is, you know, where we are really. So I think right now in South Africa we're between emotional settlement and, you know, economic settlement. Yeah, we're trying to find our economic freedom, and these pillars of the organization were actually identical to my books, because that's what they spoke about. You know, the first one spoke about the transition from apartheid to democracy, and the second one is about emotional settlement, but using the mind and personal development and self-actualization tools to do it. And the third one is entrepreneurial thinking, which speaks to, you know, the economic settlement, how to free ourselves economically. And he says, listen, this is it. And I saw it, and it was like, it was, you know, serendipity. I was like, you know what? Okay, I've been lazy, let me just rewrite these books. And that's what I did. I sat down, I rewrote, and I think, you know, having had all that experience of writing and rewriting, I think I wrote probably one of the best, you know, works, you know, to date, Obviously, we keep getting better the more we do something, and so I'd grown as a writer. My ideas were crystallized much more clearer than before, because I had also experienced a lot of experience to back up everything that I was saying in the books, everything that I was trying to teach, so, and it was working for me too. So that's another thing that is, I am the first project, when it comes to actually teaching out there, like my transformation, my growth, getting myself out of depression, for instance, was like a big accomplishment. But then not only just getting myself out of depression, but getting to a point where I could thrive, and do the things that I could do. I mean, from depression to standing in front of hundreds of people at times, that's a big leap, and fearlessly, confidence, courage, really working on my critical thinking skills, really getting to feel things, because that's what you need as an entrepreneur. There's no map, so you really have to feel things. You need to feel the environment, you need to feel the changes. And for me, because I was so developed at the time, even when the Reimagine opportunity came, to write something and partner with them, I could feel that there's a change coming, and I'm privileged, to enter and be there, while they're still trying to figure themselves out as well, So I was an early entrant into the space. So I wrote the book. So Reimagine is also co-founded by Dr. Rampele. So while looking for somebody to write a foreword, I was like, what, why don't we just send it to her and let's see what she thinks, because at the end of the day, if we're going to partner with the organization, maybe the founders need to know what we're partnering about, And she read it, she was absolutely amazed, she was blown away, and to the point where she was like, listen, I need to come up from Cape Town and meet you, because I need to meet the person that wrote this book, which was an honor for me, I think, and I'm forever grateful for that, because I was a huge fan of Steve Biko, so, and her as a co-founder of the Black Consciousness Movement, for me, it was like the equivalent of meeting a Steve Biko or him saying, dude, actually I like your work, because she's also a very intelligent woman. And for me to have access to her, just the brief as it was, I think that was magical. And so she wrote the foreword, and so get yourself a copy, Reimagining Myself. You'll read the foreword. In 2019, last year, we launched the book in June, and better than her writing a foreword, she also agreed to come and be a keynote speaker at the book launch. So yeah, mind-blowing moments again. I didn't expect that, but it happened, and I'm forever grateful for that. The nice thing about stories is that you can always select the good parts, but there's a whole lot of things in between that are not as flowery as as the good parts. It's just that we celebrate milestones, because that's what we focus on, progress. But financially, I was still struggling, and and by the way, I also in 2018, towards the end, I started a platform called Conversations Over Coffee and Art. It's a dialogue platform. It was a dialogue platform at Starbucks, Melrose Arch, and Starbucks was a partner. So they'd offer the venue, they'd pay for sound, and they'll help with a bit of marketing. And then I'd have to do the legwork, obviously getting the guests, getting the artists, because the whole idea was to have courageous conversations, and also on the other hand have artist profiling and also focus on art as a vehicle for social commentary, because visual arts has the ability to reflect the times and get into the artist's mind. So it was literally bringing the two worlds that I lived in, which is the art space and the personal development, self-actualization, business space together, and create something beautiful out of it, So get basically both sides of the brain in one platform, an amazing platform. And we grew that platform. I think I persisted. I did about 12 sessions in total. And I also grew a following, people that an organic following, people that really love the platform. And there was a lot of insights, a lot of learning, because I was engaging with different entrepreneurs, different people from different spaces. We were having a variety of topics, and the whole idea was to build it to such a point where we could even get sponsors to now fund it financially, because for the most part, I was the one who was taking money out of my pocket to make sure that sometimes the artist gets to Uber their work there, and or themselves, or and all sorts of different expenses. And it wasn't a platform where we charged people to be there. We just encouraged them to buy coffee, because we are at Starbucks, it's a coffee place. But also we had a little value basket system, and where people would then throw in money based on what they feel they got out of the, and it was just a fundraiser thing so that I could cover some of the costs, traveling costs and so forth. Yeah, so also I had Reimagined backing me up. I mean, they were helping me with posters and PR. They were also supposed to kind of help me get sponsorship, along with a company called Idea Engineers. And that's another thing, these partnerships where we use, we can get resources from companies by going into their business development funds, where we're not asking them for money, but we're asking them for services. So if you need certain services like marketing or PR, you can come in as a company and say, listen, against your PE points, please provide me with XYZ services, and I will, So we kind of had that kind of an agreement. So that was all I needed to continue. The money wasn't coming in, but I had the support to do the basics, and I ran with that. Building a brand in the process, or cementing of the brand, and its presence, because there's a lot of leverage in working on your brand. It might not be in the moment when you're doing it, but overall, once people look at the timeline and see your consistency, then there's a level of trust that builds up, and now they can start putting money on you, or they can start inviting you for opportunities that have money, or you yourself can find yourself in a position where you could now translate your brand into money, or build something new, which in my case, that's what I did. Yeah, so that was the story. So the last Conversations Over Coffee and Art was December 2019. When we started in Jan 2020, my thing was, I'm not going to do it again without my sponsors. I've already built the platform of, and also at that time I started managing a studio, the Themba Khumalo Art Studio. So now I was really getting into the business side of art, and selling art and managing an artist. So there was also the whole idea of traveling, going to art fairs. So literally I was now refocusing and moving, or rather lining up the moving parts, so that it works for me, and using what I had gained in terms of experience as leverage going forward. So unfortunately, as we all know, COVID happened. So everybody had to sit down. We all had to sit down. The traveling didn't happen. CoCa for me really wasn't going to happen. I was actually even looking at changing the model, and I'm glad that COVID happened, because it really slowed things down and allowed me to rethink how to engage with CoCa. And so yeah, and it gave me a break. It gave me a break to really look at other things and plan, because we always plan like 5 years ahead. Like, this is what I want to do. So I've got plans in the art space. There's really, really big things that are coming. And I've got plans in terms of books that I'm going to write. And I've got plans in terms of CoCa, the platform itself, because I mean, that platform is really life for me. It's an amazing platform. So yeah, so recently which is October, I reintroduced CoCa. Doing it from Themba Khumalo Art Studio, it makes perfect sense. I saw it from the beginning. The studio is very beautiful, and now, because I don't have an audience, I don't have to market. I don't need posters. You know, I'm changing the model to suit me, which is something that I was trying to figure out earlier on in the year. And now I've got a dedicated team of people to record the podcasts, to do both video and audio, and a platform called Helix. So now we're building the platform together, me as a content provider, them as the people that, you know, package it for me, you know, and it works because now I can have more guests, I can have more conversations, and I can really now, you know, get the content out there and in a way that people would love to consume. As opposed to having to come to a space once a month on a Wednesday, you know, it's just that people loved the space. But honestly, I think, now that I think about it, it was asking a bit too much of them, you know. But at the same time, it was nice. It was Melrose Arch, you know. I guess it had its own advantages, you know. But yeah, but now I've kind of streamlined, and you know, in all my journey, the one thing, it's funny that I never really knew about the lean business model, but it made sense to me that I never take up expenses. It made sense to me that I never employ people, but I outsource. I pay them when I need. I never use office space. I'd rather use coffee shops or home if it's quiet enough, or, you know, but I make sure that I do not carry expenses. That way the entrepreneurship continues, the journey continues, you know. A lot of people drop out of entrepreneurship because the expenses get too much, and then now they have to get stable jobs just to balance their lives. And so for me, my movements have always been practical. If I get to a point where I can't afford to live on my spot, my mom still, you know, allows me to go back home. I haven't been kicked out of home. You know, I'm like, okay, you're a grown man. Yeah, I'm a grown man, but I'm a black man. You know, there's a context, there's a struggle that, you know, we're from as black people. We're not expected. I know there's this societal pressure for some people that, no, you need to be out of home, you need to be independent, you need to be. If your family has not created that environment for you, if there's no support system to support that lifestyle, as you would find in other races that are more privileged, then it's okay to go back home. You know, as an entrepreneur, there is no shame in going back home. In fact, going back home and hustling from home shows the people around you that it still can be done from anywhere. Because unfortunately, when you leave and you go to the burbs, then people start thinking, oh, yo, he's made it, and he's probably got all the support in the world, and your struggles are so distant from them that they don't see them, and they think life is all beautiful. But when you're back in your hood and you're hustling from there, and they see you walking up and down, or if you're driving up and down from home, doing your daily hustle, you're with them and they're seeing the progress, that is giving back. Your life is a living example of the hustle, you know, and somebody's watching you, and somebody's probably thinking, if he can do that from home, what's stopping me? I can do it too. So you know, I fortunately, because I've been in entrepreneurship for so long, I understand that, and I understand, you know, minimizing costs. I understand that my money needs to take me to my next meeting. My money needs to take me to my next phone call, my next email. It needs to take me to my next money, you know, my next contact. I need to be in the right spaces. I need to be socializing with the right people. I need to be out and about. You know, people need to see me. You know, I mean, for instance, my books, you won't find them in a bookstore. I sell them directly, you know, and I sell them directly at chisanyamas and pubs, you know. So when I'm hanging out on a weekend and I'm having a beer with a friend, I'm gonna take time with my bag, and my bag has my books in it, and I'm gonna go to people and talk to them in, you know, different tables and say, listen, I'm an author and I'm promoting my book. This is my book. Reimagining Myself. And sometimes people be like, but yo man, we're drinking, bro, why would you do that? And I'm like, but how am I gonna access you if I don't, how are you gonna know about me if I don't talk to you? And how am I gonna access you? Because I'll never ever meet you ever again. And they start realizing that, oh shucks, the guy is right. And I also mentioned that as black people, generally we don't go to exclusive books. I mean, let's just be honest, first of all, the bookstores don't cater for us. If you look at the material, 90% is literally for white people and international authors. Then you have your local authors, but it's still white authors and publishing houses. Then you've got your blacks that are published by the big houses, but still it's very it's commercial stuff, and then you'll find a few self-published books. I mean, I had an experience where I was looking for a children's book for my daughter in a very big bookstore, but I wanted a book that told African stories with brown girls that my daughter could look at and say, yes, that's me, written by South African authors. And literally, the first problem is that they have an African section, and you're thinking in South Africa, you have an African section. This place is not for you, but we kind of accommodate you. There's a little space for you, And then when I looked at the books, I think only about 4 authors were black authors. And then I don't know, some of them were just, just little monsters. But I think there was only about 2 books that had black girls. And I was like, this is appalling. I don't feel represented here. So I understand that my target market does not go to exclusive books, so I have to have alternative, and that's also entrepreneurial thinking. I have to come up with alternative models to distribute and move my books. And so WhatsApp has been very big, social media has been very big. Obviously I'm not moving like large quantities, but every book sold takes me to my next hustle. So once again, it's a journey. If I'm lucky enough, maybe I'll find someone who'll buy maybe 5 copies for maybe friends, so that's an okay sale. So, but there is that practicality of it. Ideally, how I make my money is through workshops. So Reimagined Masterclass. Now, if a corporate then would hire me for a Reimagined Masterclass, then I'd get paid a facilitator's fee, and then the books will just be additional material. So that's also understanding the greater business model. So the book is there as a marketing tool, and also as a manual. So there's a lot of value in the book, but there's also a manual. But it's a marketing tool to let the people know that you can actually stand in front of them and we can break this down at a workshop level, in case maybe on your own there are some concepts that might elude you, or whatever the case may be. So as an entrepreneur, our job is to build business models. So not only are we solving problems, but we create business models that can either lead to income generation activities, or the potential to create income generating activities. And so we always think immediate and long term. If I can't get it all now, what can I do to get it later? So and that's where I've been. So even when you look at the CoCa, that's the question. If I can't get the money now, how do I get it later? Okay, cool. I need to build my listenership. I need to build my viewership, so that when I talk to corporates, I say I have X amount of people that you might want to access. Cool. So maybe that might happen next year, or so I just have to build the content in the meantime, so that it will lead me to an income generating activity. And I guess that's where I am now, where these products that I've built are either leading me to income generating activities, or in a way keeping me afloat. Just having the product, having the book was life-saving during COVID, because now I had something I could sell where when people couldn't go anywhere, when it was level 5, you couldn't go anywhere. If you don't have a job and you're not earning half your salary, then you're literally, screwed. And for me, I was fortunate enough to have the product. Even if I couldn't move it to the customer, I could use WhatsApp to contact people and say, listen, the book is available, it's X amount, it's $200, postage is $50. I can't send the book to you now because the post office is closed. However, if you send me the money now, I'll be able to post it to you when things open up. So, and that was my marketing, and it kept me with the people. I kept engaging with people. People could now keep track of what I was doing. If I needed help, it was easy to get help. So I wasn't drowning, in COVID, in lockdown. I was literally contacting and reaching out to more people. So it was good in terms of staying on people's minds. It was good in terms of profiling. It was good in terms of, little things that just kept things going, and that's what you need as an entrepreneur. So, which also brings me to this: there is no environment where an entrepreneur cannot thrive. There's absolutely no environment where, because that's what we do. We keep creating solutions to all types of environments. When the environment is better, when the economy is good and it's great, yeah, for sure, we're winning, yay. But in the tough economic conditions, that's where we become very important, because when everybody else says things are terrible, we're saying, how do we flip them around for us and for others, And this is why we need more entrepreneurs in this country, because we need more people that are willing to be brave enough to not listen to the news, to not listen to the economic commentators, but to rather say, okay, cool, thank you, I hear you, but I choose to do things differently. I choose to take destiny into my own hands, and I'm going to do something about it, and I'm going to find money. Because, and the sad thing that people don't realize, that as these stories of despair are being thrown around, it makes it feel like now there's no more money circulating. But the truth is, money is always circulating. No matter what the economic conditions are, money is always forever circulating. And you either have to find a way to put yourself in its way, or it will pass you by without you knowing that it ever moved, But money is always circulating at different levels. Even change is money, because it accumulates. It makes sense, cents make rands, and rands create sustenance and wealth. So literally, even in terrible economic conditions, there's somebody making money, and it could be you if you started thinking entrepreneurially. So it's very important. I found it very important for me not to listen to the news. I don't listen to the news. I don't listen to these terrible stories. I don't care about them. Because what will it do? Really, what will it do? Because I still have to do the very same things. I have to find solutions to my problems. I still, so regardless of what the news are, the goal is still the same, And and that's what we need more as a people, as a country, to stop listening to the news. And you can read up on news, but rather read on stuff that builds us. Rather read up on stuff that helps our mind expand and grows us from within, and makes us better people. Because the news are going to be there, and change is a constant. So how about we focus on real change, inner change, and forget about the outer change, so that when the inner change is fully manifested, it starts affecting the outer change, and now you control the environment. You control your feelings, you control your response to the influences that are coming from the outside. And that's where I am as an entrepreneur. I'm at a point where I'm conscious of the control I have of myself, and what that means in terms of controlling the environment, or the spaces that I interact with and influence, so that those spaces are beneficial to me, and so that so that when I walk into a room, people are like, there's Ntsikelelo Mzibomvu, you know, and I want to work with him, you know, I wanna do this with him, I want to do that, you know. I like that feeling. I like that feeling of having built trust, where people are like, no man, we know you can do this, you know. And just for me to have the freedom to be myself, and know that the only person I really need is me, you know. And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship. It's freedom. And that's my story.